Hey there, Vadim Chiline of EpicMind Studio. I'm creative director here. So today is finally going to be the long-awaited follow-up blog or video blog about focus stacking. In the part one of this video I had shown you 4 months ago is the whole science of diffraction. Why is it when you stop down your lens, you basically lose sharpness? There's a softness. Now, if you haven't seen this video, I invite you to go check it out. Today, we're going to see how to counteract that whole softness issue. In part one, I'm going to show you how you can change the camera to subject distance to counteract, as well as using focus stacking. Now, we're going to compare Adobe's method as well as third-party software, Helicon Focus, and how they both can handle this whole situation of focus stacking, which one's better. In part two, we're going to take it a little notch higher, and I'm going to describe the 3 different methods used in Helicon Focus, as well as 2 common parameters that are available to you to touch up or get a little bit of a better rendition. So without further ado, let's jump behind the camera and take a look at it. All right, so the depth of field problem. You're trying to shoot something, an object. Say this old little retro Voigtlander camera. You want to get all of it in focus. What are your options? We saw that stopping down to f32 or whatever your max aperture on your camera is, or I should say the smallest it can stop down to, it's not enough. It's not going to work. You're going to have diffraction. You're going to have blur. So what are your solutions? So let's try shooting this camera. I'm going to put it up on the shooting table here. Simple, one light, just to get an idea of what can we do. All right, so let me just set up my camera. Okay, and just snap a quick shot. All right, one photo. Let's take a look. Hello, photo. All right, so I'm shooting at f14. I'm shooting at f14 on a phase 1 camera. You could be shooting on your Nikon, on your Canon, your Sony. Doesn't make a difference. What I'm going to show you here applies across the board. So I put the camera at an angle just to have a little bit of a harder item to get into full focus. So if we look at the object in capture 1, what's closest to the camera? It's quite sharp. I would say it's very sharp. Now what happens as we move to the back? Well, look at these letters over here, the F8 on the aperture ring. It's getting blurry. Further back you go, the more blurry you get. Look at the dial on the camera. You can't even really read the brand name anymore. So look at the size of the camera versus the frame. It's not even full frame yet. I can technically make a bigger shot, but the closer I'll bring my camera, the bigger the object gets in my frame, the more out of focus it gets. So I'm not going to stop down my lens. It's going to give me diffraction. What's another option? Well, you can actually move the camera away from your subject. It will get smaller, but you can cover more with the depth of field. So let me just move the camera back, and let's see what happens. I'm going to try to keep the more or less the same field of view. I'll try. All right. And let's see. Let's put this into focus. About the same. About the same. Okay, take a shot. And let's take a look in capture 1. Now it looks like a little toy if you look in the screen. And no, it is not a toy camera. It is a real camera. If we put them side by side, the pictures, well, it certainly looks teeny. Now let's crop it to be about the same as the picture I just took previously. Add more space on the right. About like that. So, okay. So side by side, they look very similar. The one on the right is the image that was done with moving the camera backwards, and the one on the left was the one with the camera a bit closer to the subject. Let's compare depth of field. Let's look at the image on the right. So, okay, I'm going to double click on it in capture 1. That goes to 100% zoom. So we look at the front. I can read pretty well. the f8 on the aperture ring, I read very well. How about the logo? I can see, I think it's Uitlander. There you go. And now the rear of the object, there's still actually some focus softness on the back. So actually, it's not even fully in focus yet. But generally speaking, we got pretty much everything in focus. We can move the camera back a bit more, but then we're going to lose a lot more pixels. The camera is becoming really small. We're going to have to crop the photo. Now let's see what happens when I go to 100% on both shots. The one on the right, I've cropped. The one on the left is full frame. So, all right, now I just zoomed them together. The one on the left, I'm going to now double click on, oops, and bring it to 100% and bring it to about the same area. Now look at the difference in pixel data. The image on the left is ginormous. It's freaking huge. It's 60 megapixels this back. It's freaking big. The one on the right, I've cropped probably 50%. You have a lot less pixel data. Now, is this catastrophic? Is this going to mean, oh, crap, I can't use this? My clients are going to not use me. I'm not going to make money. No, if this is going to go on the web, it's enough. You don't need more. You can maybe even, this is still probably a 2,000 pixel image. It's pretty darn big. But if you need to do editing, you need those pixel data, then it's not enough. Like I know some editors like to crop, some graphic designers crop images. Once you give this to an editor or your client, if it's not for web use or it's for making little sub-macro shots, you can't use it as well. It's a smaller image. So this comes down to saying, what's the other option? That option is focus stacking. Focus stacking is taking a bunch of consecutive images of like slices as you progress through your focusing range. You start at the front tip of the object and you move to the back to get the rear out of the most out of focus point. So you're racking between there, you're taking consecutive shots. You then bring into a software which will stack the images together and produce one file in one layer that looks entirely sharp. So this is where I'm going to show you how I do it, and I'm going to compare quickly Adobe Photoshop versus my favorite, which is Helicon Focus. So let me, again, put the camera to a level that I'm going to get a big shot. So the big shot, let's come in and grab this guy closer. And you'll see once I take my shot. All right, let's see if I can go too close. I can even go closer. All right. Let's focus down, lock the camera, lock the studio stand. All right. Can actually get closer than this, but for the purposes, let's really exaggerate it and really show the purpose of this. So take a first shot. Okay, I'm going to zoom out. All right, so look at the size of the image. It's pretty darn big. It's almost full frame. It's ginormous. We got the depth of field problem. We can see that the back is out of focus. So how do we remedy this? We basically take a few shots, just changing the focusing point to further down into the object. So I'll always restart the first image. When I step away, you never know if the table moved, the tripod might have moved. It's always safe to start. I focus by hand. I'm going to talk about it in the second part a little bit more, how I tend to do it. Some people like using focusing rails. Some like using computerized rails. I'm very old school and very traditional. I just use my left hand to focus. So does my staff. So image 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's enough. I took 4 images. So we'll look in Capture 1 right now. The last 4 images. All right, so 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now here it looks like the camera might have been shooting at a different frame rate. Let me just take a quick look. Right here you can see actually the curtain. So I'm just going to crop the photo just so it matches everything properly. All right, just going to bring up the cropping a little bit up, and apply it across the board. All right, so if I go to the first image here, that's number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. Look how the focusing points change throughout everything. So first point, if I zoom in 100%, the focus is in the front of the barrel. Focusing point number 2 is around the focusing ring, the aperture ring. Shot number 3 is further down. It's a bit further down here. And the last one is, I think, getting the actual dial in focus on the rear. So I'm going to export these 4 items. I'm calling it focus stacking simple. And I select process. And once it's done, I'll rejoin you in a second. Now that the 4 images have been exported, we're going to jump into Photoshop, and I'll show you how it's done in here. So we're going to go File, Automate, Photo Merge. We're going to uncheck Blend Images Together, and then we'll browse to the file. So we'll take the 4 simple focus stacking examples, click OK, and it's basically going to take the images and combine them together. It's going to make a file with 4 different layers, and unfortunately, Photoshop is not the fastest program out there, I find, when it comes to focus stacking. This is the latest iMac. I believe probably it's an i7. It's got 8 or 16 gigs of RAM. It's not a bad computer, and it's slow. So as I'm watching this, I might just cut and come back to it once it's done. OK, Photoshop has loaded all the images together. We're going to select them pressing Shift and click All. So we're going to go to Edit, Auto Align Layers. So we're going to leave it on Auto and click OK. So it's just going to align everything so it matches from layer to layer, which I have a feeling it might have actually done that. I'm looking at the corners here in the image, and I see that I think it did. So anyways, maybe it did. Maybe I just did this step by extra uselessness. Anyways, and then we do auto blend. So edit, auto blend layers, and we're going to say stack images and a checkbox on seamless tones and color. So click OK. And now it's going to compute the image and stack everything together so we have one nice piece of pie. Again, notice the time this is taking for a simple 4 image stack. Four images. Yes, I understand the images are 160 megs each, TIFF file from a 60 megapixel digital back, but still, this is crazy slow. All right, so I'm back. Photoshop has finally decided, after a record-breaking minute and 30 seconds of processing, to spit out my beautifully stacked image. So let's look in Photoshop, and I'd say it's quite nice. Look at this. It's pretty much in focus everywhere. Look at the end. It's not bad. Is it perfect? Probably not. I'm looking. I might have gone a bit fast in my little tutorial and taken one image not enough. 5 images might have been the perfect amount. But also, let's see what the other software does, which is my software of choice, which is Helicon Focus. Now, Helicon is a standalone software. You can download it off the internet. It's pretty easy. Google it. And what that gives you is speed. And it gives you more visibility, more functions, more of everything. So let's do the same thing now and open up Helicon Focus. OK, and we'll load the images. And we'll leave it to, I guess, method B is what I prefer. I'll get into that in the second part of the tutorial. Just take my mojo on it, or whatever you want to call it. Method B, I'll press render at the default settings, and let's take a look. So already loading the images took, I think, a matter of 2 seconds. And now calculating the image is going to be a matter of another couple of seconds. All right, now it's starting. It's on image 2. And it's almost done. One more image to go. All right, done. And it probably took a whole, 20 seconds? Not very long. OK, so now let's take a look. If I click anywhere on the image, I get the little zoom tool, and I can take a look at the image, how it did. Now over here's where I believe I should have taken maybe one more frame. See right here, it's a little bit blurry, and I believe over here. So it gave me similar results to Photoshop, but in a heck of a lot less time. And that's why I love Helicon Focus. Speed, speed, speed. It's great. And I'm going to go over in the next part the actual functions that you have, or the methods A, B, and C, as well as the two parameters, radius and smoothing, in part 2. All right, now in part 2 of the video, I wanted to show you a more complex setup of an image, not images. It's going to feature a little CZ pendant, a little cheapy sterling silver piece of jewelry that's put on a fabric background. Now this background has a lot more stuff going on. It's complex, there's lines going all across, there's little fibers. It's going to be quite a bigger challenge to make a nice stack out of this versus a simple object like I just did with the camera in the previous part of the little tutorial here. So I'm going to shoot probably about 12, maybe 13 images from tip to tip, or tip to end. And I'll cover the different methods that we have in Helicon Focus, meaning method A, B, and C, as well as covering the radius and smoothness parameters you can play around with. So let me shoot a stack of images, and we'll go into the computer and take a look at it. So first photo. And I'm going to count out loud with this, just because I know a lot of people from seeing online on groups like on PhotoG's Facebook page, people love to use rails. I'm not a big proponent of rails. I don't see the need to invest in some little thing that you turn or a little computer to make it move itself. My objects are not always placed in the same spot. I find it's just quick to just use my hand to move a few quarter of an inch, millimeters, whatever. My staff does it. And I'd say most of the time, images turn out pretty darn good. So here I go. I'll count out loud. So image 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. So I think about 14 images should be enough to cover this. Of course, you can, if you're doing a job where you're going to really have to make that billboard size, you might go to 20 shots and make little increments. And you can. Your hand is very dexterous. What can I say? I like using my hand on focusing. So, is money an issue? No. It's why spend on stuff that you don't really perhaps need. It's fun having all the technology in the world, but that's just me. I'm not you. You have the budget. You decide where you want to invest. So let's take a look now in Capture 1 where we're at with the image. I'm going to look quickly through the 13 or 14 images that I took and export them. So let me take a look at the first one. I think that's it. 1, 2. Okay. All right. And then you can see as I'm selecting the focus and going through it. OK, so I'm just going to export these images, and I'll see you right back in a couple of seconds. All right, so Capture 1 just exported all the images. I'm going to go into Helicon Focus and focus stack the images using the first method, which is method A at the default settings of a radius of 8 and a smoothness of 4. So I'll launch Helicon Focus, select my images, and by default, I'm going to put it to A, 8 and 4, and select render. So it's going to take a couple of seconds to spit out that image. Now, generally speaking, method A, it's what I would call a jack of all trades, master of none. It does an okay job with almost anything you throw at it, except it doesn't make the sharpest. It makes weird blotchiness around the frame area usually, almost like a blur that happens. And what it can't really do very well is stacks, large stacks. Like if you're talking about if you're doing probably bug photography or I don't know what, microscope photography, stacks of 100 items or more, or photos of 100 or more, that it can't do very well. I don't know what happens. I've never done a stack of that size. But I do sometimes use it when it comes to jewelry photography and product photography. Method A, I will try it when another method fails. This is one thing you'll find out pretty fast with Helicon Focus. There's not one method that will always give you the best result. You have to tweak, you have to play around, and so forth. So now, taking a look at the final result from the method A, you can see right away on the image on the right, look at this weird blur that goes on. I don't know what it is. I guess I can read up about it, but I don't really care. It's just there. It's annoying. What this would mean is either A, I fix it up in post, or you just crop it. So you lose a bit of pixel data. Now, if you have a very important image that your composition has to stay intact, this is not acceptable. So you either have to compose an image even wider and then realize you will crop, or you're going to have to use a different method. So I'll process it using method B. The depth map is what they call it. So I'm going to press render. Now, method B is what I always use. It's, well, maybe not always. I'd say 80% of the time I use that. I do use A, and on the rare time, method C. Now, method B, it handles color very well, glare, contrast very well. It just can't handle images that have, the images are not shot consecutively. I don't know who would shoot images not consecutively, but for example, the other methods, they handle those type of cases better. When you're doing focus stacking, you're shooting one after the other. So it's a moot point. So method B works quite well. So it's almost finished exporting. I believe it's on the second to last image or so. Let's take a look. OK, one more image. And give me a result. And I believe from the outside, you will not see the weird pattern we had from method A, that weird blurriness, like almost a frame we're getting. We're not getting that in method B. We're going to take a look at it up close and see how which I didn't do actually in method A, which I will show you after, I just forgot. If I click in Helicon Focus with the mouse, it gives me a little loop. So I can take a look at the sharpness and if there's anything that's screwed up. And it's possible, it does happen. So let's take a look at the chain. It looks pretty sharp. Look at all the detail we have in the fabric. It's pretty good. Yeah, I'd say this is really good. I mean, right here, it has a little bit of softness. That's probably, that's where, yes, if you want to have the ultimate perfect looking image, yes, get yourself a focusing rail and do 30 images. But when you're running a product studio with 100 shots a day to do, and you do focus stacking and a heck of a lot of it, time is money. Do you have time to spend to just wait for the shot, either your rail that's automated or by hand, to sit there and go, all right, is it done yet? If your client is not making prints the size of a wall, this is not noticeable. I mean, on my screen, it's already about, what, 7 by 8, around there. That's already big. For a magazine, a 9 by 12, you're not going to notice this. So again, just realize what you're going to use your image for. Is it good enough? Yes, that's all you need. So going back at the image, zooming in, yeah, there was that little blurry spot there. But overall, I'm looking at the image, and it's pretty sharp until the end. So method B did an excellent job, and yet this is what method C is supposed to really rock at. What can I say? We'll take a look at method A now again, because I forgot to do zoom in, and just see how it did it. So I'll load that up, and in Helicon Focus, you can click on your previous outputs, and it will reload it, the one it had previously calculated. So give it a second. All right, so we'll start from the bottom here. As you can see, that weird-looking blur window happens. And now let's fall into the actual bottom of the necklace. Take a look at it. It's looking pretty good. Continuing, moving along. I feel like the inherent sharpness is a touch less than with method B for some reason. That's what my gut feeling tells me. I'm looking over here, and it just feels like around there it's a bit blurry, not as sharp. Yeah, touch less sharp. That's my gut. I could be wrong. Here you can definitely see it was something that happened here I didn't notice before. And that was a spot where I missed, and so forth. Anyway, it does a pretty okay job. Again, okay. Is okay good enough? Again, it will depend on your needs. Like, we don't need to pixel peep. What do you want to use it for? A web image for 1,000 by 1,000 pixels? This is going to be plenty. We do not need more. Now, I'm going to jump into method C, which is the one that you want to use for, let me just click on it so it just does it while I talk. Render. Method C, it's used exclusively when you have a pattern in the background. Like, say you have a lot of tree branches, if you have carpet, if you have a lot of fibers going like a crisscross with a lot of lines, a bug's wings, a bug's eyes, say a twig going across your bug's wings if you want to do macro photography of insects. In product world, I've rarely had to use method C, to be honest with you. It's out there. It does a pretty good job. The problem with method C is the color and contrast fidelity. It seems to do something with the color. You lose saturation and you lose a bit of contrast. It seems to just be, the shadows are a little bit brighter, and it handles glare off metallic objects or, yeah, off something shiny, not as well as the other two methods. You'll probably see in this is like the chain, it's just going to have a little bit of milky effect on it, and it seems to be an artifact. Let's see if it will prove me right. Well, it actually screwed it up. Surprised. Look, the edge over here didn't even turn out well, and it's supposed to be an algorithm that calculates this very well. So, didn't even do a great job. But look at the color rendition. You got almost no more saturation going on. Like, the red channel just lost a lot of detail. The shadow is not as dark, you know. And look, and I'll be honest with you, before recording this video, I did a test to just double check, you know, make sure that I'm not teaching you guys some BS crap. This didn't happen before. Why is it happening? I'm not quite sure. Maybe something with the number of steps. But as you can see already, the color is not that great. It might be something that requires that 50 shots, 60 shots. It might do a better job at. For the purpose of general product photography, I don't see the need of going outside of method B, maybe A. So let's look at the actual jewelry piece, if it turned out okay. Yeah, it feels like it's sharp, but everything has a halo. Look at the chain. It has like a milky, weird halo going around it. It's as though glare, which is one of the downfalls of this method, it comes out with a weird, almost like a Gaussian blur effect on it. Gaussian fade blur. It's not very good. You know, personally, I don't find that great. Now, the main point to get out of these three methods is there's not one solution that works best all the time. As I said, I prefer method B. Now, for you, it might be method A. It depends on what you're shooting, depends on the colors, the contrast, everything. And Helicon Focus itself says there's not one solution fits all. So play around with it. Now, what I'm going to talk about quickly is the two different parameters you can work with. Is radius, which is the most important. Sometimes when you're focus stacking, there's a weird halo that happens around your objects, you'll maybe notice. If you want to reduce that halo, you have to bump up the value of the radius to a higher value. The problem with that, like with everything, there's a yin and a yang, you lose inherent sharpness of the overall image. So again, you could play around with it, boosting it up a little bit and see what it does if it's ultimately critically important. If you're cutting out you're close cutting the object out on a white background, it doesn't really matter that it's a bit blurry, there's a little weird halo, because you're cutting it out. On an image like this one where there's a background, then yes, it's more important. Now, moving on to the smoothing variable, there it works with the transition areas between the sharp and smooth areas. And it's that little area that goes between, and that's what it works on. So sometimes if you see an image that has weird transitions going on from a sharp area to a blurry area, increasing it might create a smoother gradient in between that zone. If, on the other hand, you don't care for it, you can bring it down to a lower value, you might get blotchiness. So it's, again, you're going to get more sharpness the lower you bring down these values. But again, you have artifacts, you're going to have a blotchy looking background with, like, say on a white background, you're going to have like little splotches of gray. It almost looks like there's oil stains on your image. Not the case. It's actually the smoothness value that's been set too low. So that's a quick overview of what Helicon Focus does. I think it's great. What I feel like doing just for giggles is throwing this into Photoshop and to see what Photoshop's going to produce out of this image. So one last thing, let's take a look. Not sure if I photo merge. Yeah, you don't want blend images set to on. You have to untick that. So let's go browse, select the images. OK, so it's going to import them as layers into one file, and as you'll see on the layers palette on the right. Slowly but surely. All right, so Photoshop has, as you've seen in the part 1 of this video there, Photoshop imports the images, and it takes a very long time. And that's another reason why I don't like using Photoshop for photo stacking. It's just remarkably slow. And in this case, the image is very complex. It's a big image. Each file is about 160 megs, a TIFF file. And right now, it's allotting the layers. And it's excruciatingly long. It's very long. And as I said, time is money. I don't have time to wait this long. If I have clients on site, I can't wait for, now it's already probably been a good 2 minutes. Thankfully, we can edit videos and cut them. I'm still waiting. So I'm going to cut again, and we'll hopefully come back to an image. Anyways, I'm back. It's been another minute or two, and the progress meter on Photoshop barely moved. So I'm guessing it's just taking its sweet time for some reason, or the program has failed. I'm going to conclude the video right here. I don't recommend Photoshop personally myself for photo stacking. The few times I've used it, it's never given me the satisfying result. It's taken forever. And as I just said, time is money. If you're shooting in a studio, you're there to make money, unfortunately. To have fun, yes, but to bring some bread on the table. And with Helicon Focus, I think you're going to save a lot of time creating beautiful stacked images with full depth of field. It doesn't cost very much. Go ahead and buy it, download it, and use it, and happy shooting.